I'm Paulina Leiser, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at theDove.us.
Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and what a delight to have with us today Dr. Dathan Paterno. He's a clinical psychologist and leading author of a must-read book, Desperately Seeking Parents. And we'll talk to him about that coming up in just a few moments. Good morning, Doctor. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, tell us about the book real quick.
Well, it's a parenting book. We believe at our center, and I believe for a long time, that parents need to have a reasonable dominance and a reasonable control with their kids, establish a reasonable hierarchy, just like God has done with us. We're supposed to have dominion in our family. And so this teaches you not only why it's important, but how to establish it in your home. Well,
good for you. And it's available at the bookstores and or Amazon. And so check it out. It's called Desperately Seeking Parents. All right, check it out. Hey, you've had your challenges in saying what you believe.
You can say that.
First of all, what do you think happened in Berkeley last night? I thought that was the home ground for free speech. At least it was in the 60s.
Yeah, it's an irony, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's topsy-turvy. I mean, a man named Milo wanted to go and talk about some things. Now, he knows how to push buttons, no doubt. But this should be a place where people who can push buttons can go and speak freely. And rather than having more speech to counter whatever speech they don't like, they decided to shut down his speech and riot and all that. It's just garbage. It's the totalitarian nature of the left to shut down speech. It's very unfortunate.
It's one thing to protest. It's another thing to go through incredible violence. And then the other thing is the police did really nothing. Basically, they say, do it again tonight.
Yeah, essentially, well, this is like my parenting book. If a child does something wrong and you don't give them consequences, that emboldens them to do the exact same thing. And we've been seeing this for the last 10, 15 years, is authorities are doing diddly squat. And hopefully, from top down, we're going to get a little bit more law and order going.
All right, so tell us about your experience about a little free speech.
So, as the inauguration approached, I was actually in D.C. for a couple days beforehand, and I was hearing about some of the nonsense that was going to come down the pike for Inauguration Day. And certainly we did see it. We saw riots, and we saw some pretty disgusting placards and signs and all of that. And then the Million Women's March happened on Saturday. And I wasn't really expecting much. I was expecting a relatively peaceful protest. And, for all accounts, it was relatively peaceful. However, there was an element there that was pretty vile, pretty vulgar, and even talked about violence. The Ashley Judd screed and the Madonna nonsense. And then I saw some women dressed up like vaginas and having their children there holding up some placards and signs that said some pretty vile and disgusting things. And I had an emotional reaction to it, as I think a lot of people did. And so I took to Twitter and lampooned it and was harshly critical of it and used their language. And within a couple hours, I was being lambasted, and the left wanted my head, literally and figuratively.
So what resulted in that? Because you had a position and I guess is the operative word, right?
Yes. I was on the local school board here, and I had 2 months left in my 4-year term. And because of the upheaval and the maelstrom of complaints, I thought it would be best for both me and my family and the board as well for me to resign. So I initiated the resignation. There are some rumors that I was forced to resign. That's not at all true. I was the one who went to the board president and the superintendent and said, you know what, for your benefit, I don't want you to have to deal with all this nonsense. It might be best for me to just bow out. And also for my family, because they don't need this nonsense, hoping that it would kind of quiet down. Unfortunately, it did not. Starting the next day, I started getting hundreds and hundreds of hate mail and emails and phone calls, really disgusting things being said about me and my family. My colleagues were being called, bullied into trying to leave my practice. And then I started getting some death threats. Some people went on Facebook and threatened to plaster pictures of my daughter all over the internet. I mean, just really disgusting things.
I'm just baffled by this. I mean, And I know you're a man of faith and you come at these from that perspective, and thank you for doing that. I just kind of left speechless. Where are we going with this? I don't know what to ask. What's this doing to us?
Yeah, there used to be in the liberal circles, and I want to distinguish, as a lot of good thinkers do, distinguishing liberal from left. Dennis Prager does a good job of distinguishing the liberals from the leftist. Liberals have a cap. They have limits, they have boundaries, they have some objective criteria by which they judge morals and ethics. The leftists do not. And liberals can say, what you said was inappropriate and dumb and all of that, and I could accept that. I know I pushed some buttons and probably crossed some boundaries, and that's between me and God, and I recognize that. But the leftists don't have a cap. They have no boundary with which they can judge their behavior. And so when someone crosses them, if someone doesn't agree with their leftist doctrine and their orthodoxy, it is perfectly okay with them to get violent, to speak violence, to try to shut someone down, to try to stop their speech, and to go after them professionally and personally. That is their doctrine, and I crossed them. I did not agree with the liberal doctrine, and so they went after me.
All right, so can the liberal allow the leftists to take them over and become their voice?
It's happened. I believe that the last 10 years there has been a dramatic shift where even liberals, if they claim to say, you have a right to free speech if you are conservative, and you have a right to say the most obnoxious, dumb, inappropriate things, the leftists have shut down the liberal wing. They even will be punished if they try to support free speech, even if they try to criticize some of the crazy stuff from the left. The leftists are winning, and that's very scary. Liberals used to say, I might disagree with you, but I will support your right, and I will fight for your right to speak whatever you want. And they're being drowned out by the extreme element on the left.
Okay, so the extreme element on the left is taking over the liberal. I get that. But most of the country pushed back in this election cycle by putting Trump into the presidency. So there seems to be a little hope here. Whether you're for Trump or not, at least there's a balance happening here.
Yes, I agree, and that's why I feel a little emboldened. And I also think that's one of the reasons why they came after me. I think the left was extremely angry and frustrated and felt very powerless after they could not stop Trump. And they marched and they protested and they couldn't change him. And I think that's incredibly frustrating for them. And so they brought their crosshairs to any fish that they could find. And I got in their crosshairs and they came after me. And I think they're going to do the same with anyone who they think might be in a position of any kind of influence or power. They're going to go after them.
So is it true, Dr. Paterno, that the left, according to your description here, what they fundamentally really want is to change America and move it away from a constitutional government, move it away from a Judeo-Christian heritage foundation, and move it over here into some kind of earthly utopia? I mean, from their perspective?
Absolutely. Sure, absolutely. They want to get rid of God in every area. They want to get rid of God in politics. They want to get rid of the godly element in the family. I saw it in the school system. Unfortunately. And yes, they want to get rid of all objective criteria and responsibility and accountability. That is their utopia. It's more of a, it's kind of a crazy thought, but it's more nihilistic. And I don't think they've really quite thought through what's going to happen because I think what they're supporting, which is kind of the radical element, is going to be far more totalitarian than anything that they've claimed they've been under for the last 50 years or so.
All right, so what are people of faith to do? How do we stand and love and not tolerate?
Yeah.
We've never been in this position. We've never been in this position.
I take heart when Jesus says, love your enemies, because he presupposes that you're going to have enemies. And I take some solace in that I don't have to pretend that the left is not an enemy. It is an enemy of God. There are enemies of God all over the place. And we need to be able to recognize that. However, we do need to love, but love doesn't mean getting rid of your boundaries. It doesn't mean shutting up. It doesn't mean not fighting back. We can certainly fight back, and we have done that. I mean, look at the political culture. We now have a president who's more supportive of Judeo-Christian values. We now own most of the states in terms of their legislatures, in terms of we own the Senate, we own the House. So the conservative kind of undercurrent is winning right now. Even though culturally we have some catching up to do. So I think we need to pray. I think we need to go on social media, and we need to be circumspect, and we need to be gracious, and we need to be cautious, but we need to fight.
Would you learn from your experience?
I learned to be more careful on social media, number one. Both my business partner and my wife are reminding me that every day that I need to be more careful. And I wasn't careful. I was careless. I said some things that invited this kind of scorn and difficulty. Look, people are going to purposely twist whatever you say. I did not mean to besmirch all women or even the women at the march. I was talking about a select few. But that's not what they will interpret it as. So being careful on social media is really important.
I just had this conversation before I had you on the air. There's a problem. We don't know the spirit and the emotion when a text message or a Facebook posting or any of those things are done, nor do we know the emotion or the feeling of the person that receives it. I mean, isn't that a dangerous thing?
It is very dangerous, and that's why I think we have to be so patient and ask questions rather than jump to conclusions. That's so important for us.
Back to the school thing. I know this is touchy, and boy, every time I get into education, it's like a no-win situation, but it appears that public school is literally being taken over by a propaganda machine, and that's a broad statement. And I know there's good teachers and good administrators and all those things, but at the end of the day, it's really being pushed to the left, right or wrong?
Absolutely. I live right next to Chicago, which is probably the most liberal and radical in the nation, I would presuppose. But the collar counties, such as mine, are pretty liberal as well. Although there are, as you said, good parents, good administrators, good teachers, and good people on the board who feel strongly that parents should remain in control of their children's education. They are the primary educators. And we did a pretty good job on our board of instilling that value. But yes, public education is being pulled partly because of federal intrusion far and far to the left.
All right, one other question, Dr. Paterno. Given your experience and what's going on now, and especially last night in Berkeley, and back to what you describe as the left, what's the left's interpretation of the First Amendment? Because it seems to be extremely hypocritical.
It is extremely hypocritical. It is, we may speak anything about ourselves that we want. We can talk about in any kind of language. We can use violent rhetoric. We can refer to genitalia and sexual acts and anything that we want. But you may not speak anything negative about a person's behavior or point of view, because that will put us in a demonstrably unsafe position, and you will be devaluing us. So you may not speak your position about us.
Given the tone of the country as a result of this election cycle, do you think that point of view and that ideology is going to slowly be peeled away?
I think so. I think a lot of people are waking up to the insanity of the leftist position. It is totalitarianism. And I think a lot of people recognize that it's not only crazy, but you can't continue in a civilized society like this. And I think, I pray, and I hope that more and more of kind of the everyday folk in churches and synagogues across our country are going to fight against it and come to a balance.
You're a delight and an inspiration. Where do people get your book? I would assume it's at Amazon, it's Barnes & Noble, and at the Christian bookstores?
I don't know if it's at Christian bookstores. It should be, but yes, it definitely is at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Okay,
and it's called Desperately Seeking Parents. What's your website?
www.prpsych.com.
prpsych.com. Hey, we'll get you back. You're a delight. Thanks, friend.
Thank you much for having me. Take care.
All right, God bless. We'll be right back.